Hello everyone. Today I want to talk about security best practices with Qumulo. The reason why I'm doing this video is we get regular questions from customers and users like, do you have any form of malware, ransomware, antivirus protection on your storage system? And for the answer, I want to step back and remind you that data security is not accomplished by a single feature. Do you have this or that feature so that I can feel secure? Rather than data security requires really to build a holistic approach that could be partitioned into three domains, that is prevention, detection, and correction. And the question is, do your storage systems have functionalities that supports all these three different domains in security? Prevention is a lot about reducing the risk surface so that potential attackers don't find a lot of holes or possibilities to get into your system or into your network even. And then if that happens, you want to detect and stop suspicious activities as early as possible in your network. That's a second aspect that we want to look at. And then obviously, if things happened, you couldn't prevent any hackers or malicious software to grow in your network. You have to have a plan for recovery and rollback. And we want to look at what features Qumulo provides to support that strategy as well. Let's have a look at some very typical attack vectors for malware. For example, very famous is spear phishing attacks with emails. They are very advanced in the meantime. Sometimes you feel like you get a personal email. There is some knowledge about what you have. I recently got an email that looked like it's coming from my bank, but really showed, hey, you have this and this account type and you need to change something. So that's very targeted. Oftentimes also still operating system vulnerabilities are being used to hack a system. So you should always use the latest fixes, the latest patches. And with Qumulo, that's the case. We regularly update, as we will see in the next couple of slides. Man-in-the-middle attacks, Trojanized software, web server exploits, cross-site scripting, SQL injection, domain spoofing, watering whole websites. Just some very prominent examples of attack vectors these days. And you may ask yourself, what has this to do with storage? And you can see, well, probably very little, right? So at least the most efficient way to prevent and detect those attacks are not on the storage system. You would like to detect these things much earlier in your whole infrastructure. If you just ask for, hey, does your storage have a ransomware detection? That is probably a strategy that's much too late. You want to cover your potential suspicious activities, malware, antiviruses before they hit the storage. As you can see here in this picture, there is typically attacks coming from outside. They start in the network. They infect the compute systems, and at the end of the day, yeah, maybe they reach the storage system, but what I want to say is if the stuff hits the storage system, it's already too late. So a much better strategy would be to uncover suspicious behavior, users, processes, attackers much more early in the whole phase here. So let's have a look of the Qumulo features that support these different areas of security controls. That is prevention. We have a lot of features that reduces your risk surface if you use Qumulo, and we will talk about many of these in detail. We have features that support detection. We integrate and work together with all modern SIEM solutions or DPS solutions, data prevention systems, or IDS systems, intrusion detection systems as well. And then obviously you have to have a recovery plan in your whole data center. That means once you got infected by malicious software, then you have to have a recovery plan, and then we will have a look of how Qumulo is supporting that as well. Let's talk about prevention for a moment and how Qumulo helps you to reduce your risk surface. We start with a lockdown Linux operating system that we use. Qumulo uses Ubuntu long-term support version. That is a minimal image that we take and we throw out everything, every package, every service that we don't use is not contained in that images. That reduces the risk surface. And then when we talk about the Qumulo image, that is the Ubuntu underlying operating system that we maintain. You don't need to take care about it. We update it regularly and we deliver it together with our Qumulo core software. So this image, together with our software, so the Qumulo image, is being shipped every 2 weeks. That's not only contains security features or patches, but also regular functional features, performance improvements, and so forth. So it's a minimal image, no unnecessary tools in it. Updates and fixes are built in by Qumulo automatically. It's painless management for customers. The upgrade process of Qumulo in the meantime is something like around 20 seconds. So it's very lightweight and it is very easy to implement. You can see the release notes and even download the newest image on care.qumulo.com. Another aspect of Qumulo is that our application runs completely in user space. And because of this, we can upgrade the kernel much easier. For example, when we need new kernel support for a new Ubuntu version or new hardware support, then we can change the kernel quite quickly. Or when security aspects require us to change the kernel, that's possible as well. Then, because we run in user space, Qumulo doesn't have any knowledge of the underlying Linux users and groups. Our users and groups are completely maintained in Active Directory so that any underlying Linux user or group doesn't say anything. So for example, if you have a specific local user that is not a root user that logs into your system, this user cannot even see the file system. Even the root user couldn't see the file system itself, right? We don't use any underlying Linux file system functionality. So that means a local user who has even access to the system cannot directly see the file system. And then also we have a natively developed protocol stack. That means we use no third-party components like Ganesha or Samba to support protocols. Everything is really developed by Qumulo itself for the data access protocols. There is no third-party code included for this. And then there is another interesting feature that is role-based access control, which allows you to create specific rules and reduce your risk surface even further. That means you have a user that is supposed to do some administration, but you can limit the task that this user can do. And I probably show you an example. But before that, we have a look at the predefined roles, which is an administrator role, the data administrator role, an observer who can really only observe things, and a replication administrator. You can already imagine what that means. This user is able to implement and maintain replications between different clusters. And we could even create additional roles and assign users or even groups to that role. Let's have a quick look at this. Here I'm logged into a running cluster, and I can go to role management. You can see here administrators, data administrators, observers, or replication administrators. And it's very simple if I want to add a user or group to this. So for example, if I want to add a member here, I can add myself to it. So that in this moment I would also have privileges for data administration. Now imagine we want to create a different role that is not predefined, that is also very simple. Let's say for a moment we want to create something that's called snapshot administrator, and obviously we create some description that says can manage snapshots. So we then need to assign specific privileges to that role, and from the name here we can see, for example, this role allows snapshot reads, snapshot writes, and for example we could also allow to create a policy for snapshots, and we would also allow to read policies, and we have a nice API that allows you to see differences between two snapshots. It's very good for backup software, for example, and then also to calculate used capacity. So all these privileges that are required to really run and maintain snapshots. Let me save them. And here we have the snapshot administrator. Now I can add a group again, or my own AD account, and here we go. Let's have a look at some additional features that allows you to restrict or to limit access and visibility to shares and exports further. In addition to user group permissions for SMB shares, you can also restrict the access even further to hosts or network ranges. That is, these users who have privileges to access these SMB shares, they also need to use a device that sits within that allowed group of devices or network ranges. For NFS, there are no privileges for users, but it's still useful to restrict the access to devices that you know are in a specific network. Another feature for SMB is access-based enumeration, which can be enabled per share, and that makes shares only visible to users who have privileges to access it. So outside users or users who have no privileges to access or even see that share will not see it. They cannot browse the server and they will not be shown that share. We will show that later on in the demo. To enable it, it's that simple. Then you can go even a step further in that you say if you create a share, that should be shown to no one at all, even not those users who have access. That means if those users want to mount the share, they need to know the exact path to be able to mount this. You cannot browse the cluster to show you this share. And we will show that in the demo as well. And then some words on data encryption. Data at rest is by default encrypted on Qumulo. There is nothing that you need to do about it. The encryption keys are stored on the boot drive. There is just a command to show them or to rotate them. So again here, very easy to manage, nothing really to do for the administrator. They cannot even forget it because all data on all drives will be encrypted by default if you install a new cluster. And then per share, you can also decide to encrypt over the wire, which makes data less visible on the network. And that's a feature that comes for free as well, same as the data and rest encryption. And think about other vendors. They need to sell you self-encrypting drives, which are more expensive. In addition, our engineering team really managed to make a very efficient implementation so that it doesn't cost you any performance penalty. Let's quickly jump over to a real-life cluster to see how easy these things work. I have logged into one of our clusters already, and if I want to create a share, I move to sharing and SMB shares. Here's the list of shares that already exist on the cluster. I create a new share. I need to provide a file system path. Let's say I create a share for my home directory. And then I provide the share name. Let's call it Stefan. If I want this share to not be shown to even me, then I can add a $sign at the end of the share name, which means this share will be hidden. I cannot see it even if I have privileges to access it. We will see that in a minute. So, description, Stefan's home. Here I can enable access-based enumeration. By the way, I also can tell the system to create a new directory if that is not already existing. I can check to enable access-based enumeration, which would not show the share to people who have not privileges to access it. And I can enable encryption as well. As you see, everything is really simple here. Then I can go down to add or remove permissions. So for example, I would remove the privileges for everyone to read the share, but I would of course add myself to be able to access the share and even modify it. So that's my Active Directory user. I want read, write, and change permissions. And that is it. Here we go. That's all I need to do. The share is created. Let me see where it is. Here we go. And you can see from the $sign, it is hidden. Let's move over to the Finder or Explorer. In this case, I'm using a Mac, so it's Finder. If I want to create a share, so you can see here, I can connect to that cluster. Let me make that more visible here. Connect to that cluster. And you can see here, this share that's called Stefan is not visible in the list here. All right, so I need to know the share name. So if I want to mount it, I need to enter the full path, including the $sign, and then I'm able to connect. Here we go. Here's my directory, and I can even move data in it if I wanted to, just like this, and that was it. Let's see how Qumulo supports detection of malicious activities and malware. The most important thing, if you consider a security strategy, is likely auditing. Because whatever happens, you cannot look into the future. Attacks get more advanced, but what you should do, you should be able to see and look in the past. What did happen? Who attacked? And how did it start? What was the mechanics of the attack? You can only see that if you really do auditing, if you really record what was going on the system. And that is related to data access as well as management. And Qumulo is using an industry standard format, a syslog format, and we can send that to any SIEM solution that is currently in the market. So for example, and that's just a list of some prominent examples, but there are many more. All of them should be able to read syslog formats. So Splunk, we have a solution on our website or videos out there that shows how the integration works. It's really simple. We support Elasticsearch. We integrate with AWS CloudWatch. And as I said, many other SIEM solutions that are out there in the market. And well, all these solutions are there to collect data, index data, analyze and correlate data so that you are always able to see what's going on, what did happen, or even what is going on in real time. And just a side comment on on the documentation. If you go to our care.qumulo.com site, you search for auditing, and then you will find the documentation here about auditing, regardless of whether it's integrating with Splunk or CloudWatch or Elasticsearch. There's articles about it, pretty easy reading, and the auditing article tells you what exactly is being audited. You see here all the file system operation events that we audit, all the management events that are being audited are listed here with explanations. Then we explain you how to configure it. It's really a 2 minutes task, not even. It's that simple. Right? All right. Moving on. Let's see how Qumulo supports detection of malicious activities and malware. The most important thing, if you consider a security strategy, is likely auditing. Because whatever happens, you cannot look into the future. Attacks get more advanced, but what you should do, you should be able to see and look in the past. What did happen? Who attacked? And how did it start? What was the mechanics of the attack? You can only see that if you really do auditing, if you really record what was going on the system. And that is related to data access as well as management. And Qumulo is using an industry standard format, a syslog format, and we can send that to any SIEM solution that is currently in the market. So for example, and that's just a list of some prominent examples, but there are many more. All of them should be able to read syslog formats. So Splunk, we have a solution on our website or videos out there that shows how the integration works. It's really simple. We support Elasticsearch. We integrate with AWS CloudWatch. And as I said, many other SIEM solutions that are out there in the market. And well, all these solutions are there to collect data, index data, analyze and correlate data so that you are always able to see what's going on, what did happen, or even what is going on in real time. And just a side comment on the documentation. If you go to our care.qumulo.com site, you search for auditing, and then you will find the documentation here about auditing, regardless of whether it's integrating with Splunk or CloudWatch or Elasticsearch. There's articles about it, pretty easy reading, and the auditing article tells you what exactly is being audited. You see here all the file system operation events that we audit, all the management events that are being audited are listed here with explanations. Then we explain you how to configure it. It's really a 2 minutes task, not even. It's that simple. Right? All right. Moving on. And Qumulo supports this approach, right? So we can send data to whatever tool you use, your IDS system, your SIEM system. They all can read this standard format so that you know what's going on even in real time. And obviously, if we attack something that looks suspicious, you can always go back and launch a activity after that event is occurred. That could be log the storage device, make a share read-only, set a quota to 0, disable a user, remove a user from a specific RBAC role, and so forth. There is a large number of activities that could help to stop the malicious activities from happening. And of course, that should be automated. Well, then there is the question about antivirus scanning. We do support every antivirus scanning solution that's out there that's able to mount a share or mount an export and run the scan. Best practices is definitely you should schedule scans to run regularly on the system. We'd recommend to spread the load across different nodes because we can absorb a lot of IOs and support that very fast scanning on multiple nodes at the same time. For that, you would probably divide your namespace so that you can dedicate specific search engines or scan engines to specific portions of a namespace. If you really need real-time scans, so that means before you open the file, you want to scan it in real time because you, for some reason, don't do it on the network, then you should do that on your desktop or server devices. Why? If we would provide a possibility to do that on the storage system, the real-time scans would really increase response times from milliseconds to seconds potentially. And that's contradicting to the user requirements for low latency and fast access times. This statistic shows the aggregated read latency across the Qumulo global install base. And if you add together the bars in the green area, you can see that more than 95% of all read requests are served with a response time of less than 1 millisecond, which is amazing. So, and now consider you would add a scan engine in between and your response time is not a millisecond anymore, but probably 10 seconds or even 15 seconds before you can really open the file because it's been scanned first. That is typically not accepted by users or even applications, and that would be really contradicting to the use of a high performance file system and NAS system. In addition, this would require, from experience, 1 to 2 scan engines per Qumulo node to perform the real-time scans. So even with this very slow throughput that you then get, or very low throughput, because of the scans in real time, you would need a whole bunch of hardware to do that. So together, that doesn't really make it attractive to do real-time scans. If you need that, we would strongly recommend do that on your servers, on your desktop devices. There are agents out there for Windows, for Linux, for everything. And also do that in addition on your network with content filtering and so forth. Finally, we need to talk about how Qumulo supports you with recovery. Best practices for a good recovery strategy is to create snapshots regularly. And Qumulo snapshots are instantaneous. They can be created per directory, and they can be created on demand, so by a push button, or they can be scheduled by a policy. Restore is possible through a Windows VSS integration, so you know that feature. You are on your File Explorer and then you click the right mouse on a file and then you get shown previous versions from which you can pick and choose. Or in every directory you have a .snapshot subdirectory from which you could copy back files that are clean. Snapshots don't consume a lot of space, only changes are consuming capacity, and snapshots can be deleted manually or automatically according to some retention policy. For example, you could create a policy that takes a snapshot regularly, and then you could say for policy 1, retention is 1 day, another policy has a retention period of 1 week or even 1 month. And our replication feature allows to replicate snapshots and keep different retention times on the different locations, which makes it more attractive. For example, you have snap 1 policy. There's a retention time of 1 day on the primary system. It's being replicated to the second system, but there it's kept for 7 days, and so forth. So second snapshot policy creates snapshots that are being kept for 1 week on the primary side and for 4 weeks on the secondary side, and so forth. That is very attractive as well, because sometimes you don't know when an infection did happen, so you need to be able to roll back to different points in time when required. Another option is Qumulo allows you to move data to an AWS S3 bucket. And you can do that from any portion of the file system or directory. And that is, you set up a replication job like you would set up a replication policy to another cluster. You set up a copy job for a specific portion of the file system to an AWS S3 bucket. There are videos out there on YouTube that demonstrates that it's that easy to implement. So beside the fact that this opens up new workflows to be able to access the same data on a file system as well as over a S3 bucket in object format, this also is a security feature because you have now your data on a completely different media in a different location. You could even decide to use tiering to move data or tier data down to Glacier, which is very attractive pricing for archiving data. And from our perspective, on the Qumulo side, it's no additional cost. Like always, everything is covered with the Qumulo subscription, and the restore could be done through copying data back from the bucket to your file system. Last but not least, very common practice since decades, backup your data. And we have a very attractive backup API. We don't support NDMP, which is a very old, very unhandy protocol to really back up file data that was predominantly developed for tape. But we do something more smart. So we provide an API. Any backup solution that can mount a share can back up data from Qumulo. And some solutions like Atempo and Commvault and others are on their way to use our API that allows them to, well, do an initial backup. And then going forward for incremental backups, they use the API to identify changes between two snapshots. So you could say, hey, the snapshot from yesterday and from the other one, which I just took, tell me just the difference. And then the software can go ahead without any tree walk, can just back up the data right away that has changed. And this is very fast because most of the time is consumed by the tree walk to figure out, hey, has some specific data been changed or not since the last backup? And this can be skipped with Qumulo. So I just want to mention that I put this content in a white paper as well that should be available on our website at some point. I'll put the link down in this description section of the video. If you want to have it earlier, just send me a mail and I will provide that to you. So again, as a summary, just can't emphasize enough that data security is not accomplished by a single feature. It is not accomplished by, hey, turning on this knob and then you can feel secure. It's a holistic approach. You should reduce your risk surface with prevention activities, and Qumulo has a lot of features that I mentioned a couple of them here in this video. You need to be able to detect what's going on and what was going on in the past. So we support that predominantly with our auditing functionality. And then you probably want something that helps you in case really a attack has been successful. You want to have some features that allow you to roll back to a different point in time. We have that through snapshots, through replication, to backup, to copy data to an S3 bucket. And that was it for today about security best practices with Qumulo. Thanks for watching.